Donald Trump's economic approval rating is collapsing, and it's starting to signal what feels like a sea change in his presidency. Now, when Trump started his second term, he had net positive approval ratings on inflation, prices, and the economy by anywhere from 10 to 15 points. So the majority of Americans thought he was going to come in and really improve the economy in his second term as president. However, that was then, and this is now. And after months of bluster, I guess years of bluster between the campaign and the start of his presidency, Americans are starting to wake up to the fact that Donald Trump does not care about those things at all. Now, I want to play a clip for you that Harry Enton, the pollster from CNN, talked about this morning. Some new polls just came in about Trump's economic approval rating, and the news is not good for him. Let's take a look at that.
What's he doing?
Yeah, my mama was a doctor, and I think she'd look at these numbers and say that Donald Trump's doing absolutely awful in the minds of the American people. What are we talking about? We're talking about new lows for Donald Trump. He's hit new lows for himself. Trump's economic net approval rating hits lows with these pollsters. CNBC, look at this. Down now, minus 13 points on the net approval rating on the economy. You come to this side of the screen, it's minus 19 points among Quinnipiac. And keep in mind, we're talking about hitting record lows for Donald Trump in either his first term, which of course ended back in 2021, or his second term, which is ongoing right now. The bottom line is Donald Trump is at the lowest point ever in either of his terms.
But compare it to presidents historically.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. Donald Trump is beating himself in the way you don't want to beat yourself. Record lows.
So, what used to be one of Donald Trump's strongest issues is now becoming his biggest liability. And I think that is something I want to focus on today, is the fact that MAGA in Trump world is all about promising a better tomorrow without delivering on it. When things are bad, they always say, oh, things are going to get better. We promise. We never see things get better. And that's what we're seeing here is, the average cost of groceries is, up 8% since January, while household savings for the average American have gone down by double digits. But that isn't stopping the administration from going out there and trying to spin this as something where, well, don't worry, it's all going to be good. We've got your back, and things are going to look really good in the future. So that's exactly what Scott Bessent did this morning when he went on CNBC to claim that 2025 might be a terrible year for Americans. They might be unhappy about the economy, but maybe next year will be better. Let's take a look.
Things look pretty good at home, huh?
Larry, things look great, and they're good now. I think 2026, 2027 are going to be great years because, as you know, part of what's happening with the tax bill is the president's campaign promises, which he kept, on no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and deductibility of auto loans for American cars. On the first three, working Americans have kept their withholding the same. And you might recall, I'm also the IRS commissioner, so I can see what's going on at the IRS. And I can tell you that in the first quarter of the year, we are going to see substantial tax refunds for working Americans.
So the administration keeps saying that the best is yet to come, but for who? Because we know from the Trump tax plan that the big beautiful bill and the tax breaks, and that while the corporate tax breaks remain permanent and the tax breaks for the top 1% will net significant savings from them, that the reality of this bill is that 60% of American households are going to see their taxes increase as a result of the big beautiful bill. So, I guess they might be telling the truth when they say, there's some great things to come, but what they mean is there's some great things to come for the ultra wealthy and billionaires, while people are dealing with healthcare increases and having their SNAP benefits cut, while Donald Trump builds a $300 million gilded ballroom and tears apart the White House. And look, this isn't just everyday consumers that you have the administration BSing and claiming that things are going to get better. Entire industries are fed up with the president this year. We've seen the farm community, the agricultural community in the United States get really pissed with Trump as a result of this Argentinian bailout that he's doing, and this new news we found out yesterday that the government is going to start importing Argentinian beef, which is going to hit American cattle ranchers really hard. And Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, it was out there yesterday, also trying to put this positive futuristic spin, because clearly they're not delivering for farmers right now. And so she's got to go out there and tell them that maybe things will be better in the future. Let's take a look at that.
Farmers don't want checks from the government. They want to be able to sell their product. And again, this short-term, bridge that we're building to get us to the next phase, all of these trade deals that the president has struck, every one of them will really begin to move into effect beginning next year. But why these loans are so important and this aid is so important right now is why these soybeans are sitting, in piles waiting to be sold while we're waiting on China and other markets. They are already planning for our farmers what they're going to do next year, what they're planning.
It's always about next year with this administration. I mean, it's always about next year with the healthcare plan. It's about next year that the farmers are going to do better. It's about next year that Americans are finally going to see, everyday Americans are finally going to see a little more economic prosperity and a little more money in their wallets. And look, so many of these things, including these industries that the president is hurting through his terrible economic policy, these people just want to sort of be left alone to do their jobs and live out a career and make their farm successful. They don't want the government to have to subsidize them. They don't want the government to have to get involved in their life. And then they didn't want the government in the first place to start a trade war that increased the cost of all of their equipment, all of their feed for their livestock, all of their fertilizer, everything that makes them have to raise their prices on the consumer. They didn't want anything to do with that. And so they're watching the administration set their house on fire and then show up and try to put it out with a water gun. It's not working. And I think we're starting to see that reflected in the polling as well. And that's where some of this good news is, I guess, in a sea of bad news, is that for a long time, Republicans have sort of coasted on this idea that they are the best party for the economy, and Democrats have sort of suffered as not having not being the party that was viewed that way, and that's changing. There was a Gallup poll released last week. Gallup's a nonpartisan, very well respected pollster, and Gallup found that Democrats now have a 4-point lead over Republicans when Americans were asked the question, which party do you think would make the country more prosperous? And now that sounds like a small lead until you hear that Republicans were leading when asked that same question last year. They were leading by 13 points. So economic approval has swung in the Democrats' direction by 17 points, meaning Americans might finally be waking up to the idea that Democrats might actually be the party best equipped to protect everyday Americans and the average consumer and protect the American economy. And that 4-point lead for Democrats is also the biggest lead they've had since 2012. Now it's on the American or the Democratic Party to roll out plans and discuss solutions that are really going to solidify that support and grow that support, as well as Trump keeps hurting the economy in favor of the 1% and billionaires. And it is also interesting to watch the propaganda machine that Trump has built basically try to talk up the bad things that are happening in the economy with like a smile on their face. And I want to play something that Kayleigh McEnany, the former Trump press secretary from the first term, who's now a Fox News host, what she was talking about yesterday when she was talking about a new economic update she'd seen. Let's take a look at that.
And last but not least, one trend in True Brand is making a big comeback as consumers tighten their wallets. And here it is, Hamburger Helper. The mix of mac and cheese and ground beef is seeing a surge in sales.
Now, it's so bizarre to watch what is clearly this, this recession indicator of people who are struggling to feed their families, having to turn to sort of cheaper alternatives in order to feed their families on a tight budget. It's weird to hear her talk about that with a smile on her face and hear the other Fox News person in the background go, that must be so good. It's like, no, people are doing that because they're hurting economically. And this Fox, Trump, MAGA spin propaganda machine has lost the plot at this point. And Americans are starting to wake up to it. They're not stupid. They're watching their bills climb. They're watching their savings shrink. And they're watching the president do things like brag about imaginary money that doesn't exist. Trump keeps talking about the fact that, the economy, we've had $20 trillion of foreign investment in the US. Nobody knows what that means. First of all, that number used to be $6 and $7 trillion a couple months ago. And now he is talking about it in speeches like this. Let's take a look.
Month number 12, I think we're going to have $20 trillion of investment. We're over 17 right now. As an example, President Biden had less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We're going to have $20 trillion in less than 12 months, and we're over 17 trillion right now. So it's the largest amount in our country by far.
That's 2/3 of the US annual GDP. So that's not true. It's just a lie. He's making these numbers up. And, it does. I think at this point, I think for years, the MAGA movement ran on the myth that Donald Trump was a businessman and he was super successful and that he could fix the economy. And he kind of coasted on what was a good economy left by Obama in 2016 and 2017. And now, 10 months in, the numbers tell the truth. Donald Trump isn't fixing anything. He's wrecking them, repackaging them, and trying to sell them as good. And it's not working anymore. That's it for me today. If you like this video, throw a like on it. Follow Demwins Media on YouTube. Follow me at buildingthebench.substack.com, and we will keep bringing you the news as you need to see it. Thanks for watching.